the recording. There we go. Right, everyone. Well, thank you very much for being here with us tonight. Thank you for your time. I'm in France at the moment and it's nice and sunny. I don't know what it's like in your part of the world, but thank you for spending a little bit of your time of your evening with us. So before we start, I want to say that, today's session is very much about you, where you are in your language learning journey and where you want to go. It has to be an interactive session, okay? We want it to be a really good 60-minute session for you. So first of all, we would very much love to know if you are currently learning a foreign language or if you are intending to do so very soon. And if so, what language you are currently learning. So if you want to pop this into the chat, because we'd love to find out. I also, would like to say what qualifies Laura and I to be here today, because I can see some familiar faces, but I think that there are a lot of people on the call today who don't know me. There are certainly a lot of people who have registered who I've never had a connection with. So what qualifies us to be here today? So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nathalie Danon. I run the Vici Language Academy, which is a boutique language academy in Newbury, West Berkshire, in a beautiful little market town in the south of England. And we also have an office in France. And my colleague Laura on the call with us tonight is the manager of the French office. I also run another business called My Language Lab, which is also a language training company based in London that specializes in language exams, particularly for children. I come from a very beautiful part of France, in the east of France, very spoiled part of France called Jura, by the Swiss border. And it's fair to say that as beautiful as it is, or was, I'm still here now because this is where our French office is, but this is where I grew up. It wasn't particularly a place where bilingualism was on the card. My parents didn't speak a foreign language. There was very, very little opportunity to learn to speak a foreign language where I grew up. And also, I was not an academic high flyer. So there wasn't much for me that said that one day I could be bilingual or trying to be bilingual as I am, aiming for at the moment. So all my language experience is down to started to run a business in Newbury 21 years ago now, a very humble French language agency where I was teaching French to children, to running a company with 40 members of staff with offices in France and in the UK. All of it is down to hard work and experience and really learning as I go along. So this is a little bit about me, and I'm going to ask my colleague Laura to introduce herself as well.
Hi, absolutely. So I am pretty much the complete opposite of Nathalie. As Nathalie said, I'm the manager of the French office. So while we work very, very closely together, our backgrounds and our stories are very, very different. I actually have been bilingual since I started to speak. So my mother is English and my father is Belgian. So I was born in Brussels, and then I grew up in the UK, and then I studied in the UK, in France, and in the Netherlands. So my upbringing has been very international, and I've always spoken lots of languages. We had a really multilingual household, and I've always loved languages. For me, as well as being a huge part of my life, it was always something that I knew I wanted to do for my career. Academically, I was really interested in languages and linguistics. So I studied up to master's level in linguistics. And since then, I have been teaching foreign languages and working in the language industry, both at universities and at Vici as well. So unlike Nathalie, I have very much more of the growing up bilingual experience, and then the really academic path that I had up until I started working at Vici as well. So for me, it's always been a huge part of my life. It's always been my passion. It's always been my interest. And I'm also a lifelong learner of languages, meaning that I've just started to take Spanish lessons as well. So I feel like we have very different stories, but very complementary as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I invited Laura here tonight, because we work very closely together to build language programs for all our learners in France and in the UK. But despite our background being very, very different, we have one thing in common, and is that we really want to make languages accessible to everyone. So we really want to share our experience and expertise. And because I have the practical side of it, and I'm just a little bit older than Laura, I have a lot more experience than her. She could nearly be my daughter, but that's a story for another day. And obviously she has the very, high academic experience of it. So combined together, I think that we can do some great work and really help the people who come to us at the Academy. Before we really get going into the content of this masterclass, can I just check that everyone has had a workbook? Because we obviously want you to be very proactive. It's not about us, it's about you. You need to do the work. So everyone has had a workbook. If not, please say in the chat, because you should have had an email, but with technology it happens. Laura can more certainly send it over to you. And the first thing that I would like to start with, before we get into talking you through two different strategies that I truly believe are going to be impactful for you, I want to start with objections. So let me tell you, in the 21 years of coaching people in foreign languages, and for me, it was French, I've heard all sorts of excuses. So people would say to me, I don't really have an analytical mind, so I'm not going to be good at grammar. Like, I'm just never going to get the conjugation, the verbs ending, the sentence structure. It's not for me. Or some people would say to me, I don't have a good ear for it. A friend of mine said to me last night, Natalie, have you always been good at languages? And I said, no, of course not. And she said, you see, I'm rubbish at languages. Like, I could never speak a foreign language. Now, this young lady who's, I think, in her early or mid 30s, a very good friend of mine. She lives in the United States, and she was working in IT for many, many years. She did all sorts of secret stuff for the government. And now she's decided to be a doctor. So she is at vet school. That's how high her IQ is. And she tells me that she can't learn a foreign language. So I don't know, what's left for the rest of us, but clearly I need to have a little bit of discussion with her. It is fair to say that we all have our strengths and weaknesses, okay? You are not going to be good at everything when you learn a foreign language. Like, let me be clear. If anyone told you otherwise, it was a lie. You are never, ever going to be good at everything in a foreign language. But there are tools that can make you excellent at the stuff you are good at. And therefore, you will compensate for the stuff that you're not so good at. So Laura knows me well, and she knows that I love analogies. And so when we were chatting about this masterclass, I said to her, well, you see, it's a little bit like me and desserts. Creme brulee is my favorite dessert. I cannot make it to save my life. It's just really too complex for me. But I can make a really good apple tart, tarte aux pommes, the French way. I also add, for those of you like tarte aux pommes, on the side note, lemon curd, to add a little bit of Britishness into it, and it tastes delicious. The thing is, I don't consider myself being rubbish at making desserts just because I can't make creme brulee. There are a lot of other desserts that I can make and that are, fairly good. So when you think about learning a foreign language, whether you've started or not, what are your objections? What are the personal barriers that you put up? What are the things that you think you are really not good at? Would anyone like to share? Anyone wants to share their experience of either if you've started learning a foreign language and you think that's really not my forte, or you want to start to learn a foreign language, but you're telling yourself that you're not good at this or good at that? Or am I the only one who thinks that she's not so good at this or good at that? Because I'm telling you, if you've been following me on my social media, I've been talking about my own journey of learning a new language. And as I said it before, and I'll say it again, owning a language academy does not give me a fast track, ticket to be trilingual and learn Spanish just like that. I have to do all the work that you have to do as well. I just have a great team around me to kick my butt whenever I don't do my homework, but it's not easier for me than it is for you. So I do have objections. Oh, Linda said, I find it hard to keep up with the native speakers. Well, Linda, what language are you trying to learn?
Shall I speak? It's easier.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I'm learning Spanish.
Okay.
And do you want any detail about?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I first of all attended an adult education class in Newbury. This was before the pandemic, and that I quite liked that. I quite liked the person-to-person, interaction. But then, of course, with the pandemic, it went online like this, which is not my favorite way of learning. And I stuck with it for a couple of terms, and then I decided, nah, it's not really for me. But I kept up the learning using, I don't know if this is a dirty word in your environment, but I kept on learning using Duolingo.
No, it's fine.
So I have been doing this now for over 1,000 days.
Wow, well done. Yeah, so, that's commitment.
Yay me! But I feel like I can take apart grammar and stuff like that, but I find, because I guess I'm not having any conversations, I would like some sort of conversational Spanish, because to me the whole point of learning a language is so that you can communicate with other people in that language.
Yeah, absolutely. So you see, we can dig into that a little bit later, but from what you've just said, a lot of people have, taken on to going online. And even for us at the Academy, we have premises in France, we have premises in the UK. Let me tell you that 1 in 5 of our students is now learning online, because people prefer nowadays learning online. We still have a lot of people coming to the Academy, but we have people who are local to Newbury and who are still learning online. However, for you, this could be one major thing that you could identify, that you could learn with some digital resources such as Duolingo, and also that you need to complement that with face-to-face lessons. We have a whole chapter on the difference between learning online and learning offline, and I'm more than happy to grab a coffee with you. I'll be in Newbury next week to talk about it. But this is one way of identifying what's right for you and what's not. Some people can really focus online, and in a classroom, not so much, because it's quite friendly. There's people around. It's a bit more of a social club, whereby online is something that they turn up at and they know they have to be ready for it and they feel very focused. Clearly for you, it's the other way around. So that's clearly one thing to identify as not a weakness, but perhaps not an area where you're not going to thrive. And as for the app, we also have an entire chapter on that as well. We are absolutely not against apps. And when I was in Ibiza last week, for those of you who again follow me on social media, I was there on a Nordic walking holiday, nothing to do with the languages, but because I'm learning Spanish, I thought I'm going to make the most of it. And I set myself a challenge of doing something different every day. for 6 days. I can share that as well because it started with a little bit of fun, and it turned out to be really useful for me to boost my skills. And I talk about apps, and I'm absolutely not against learning apps. You just need to understand, how to use them, when they are going to be useful, when not so much. And also, please remember that learning a language is learning to communicate. Language is communication. So an app is great because it immerses your brain into the language. It helps you to consolidate some of the words that you may have seen in your class, but you will never be able to be fluent with just an app. However, as an add-on tool, I think it's great. I use a digital platform myself. Yeah. So anyone else has any objections as to why they might not be so good at learning a foreign language, or you're all super confident about it? Carrie, you want to say something?
Yes,
And then Christelle, you want to say something?
Yes, if you want. So just for me, the difficult part is the spoken language.
Mm-hmm.
I can listen, I can read, I can write, but you see, just now it's it's very hard for me because I know I don't know. It's about my tongue. It's not everything is not in place. With my Adobe community, I speak. I don't speak. We have a lot of talks in English, but it's in a chat. It's not speaking. And okay, so for me the difficulty is here.
Yeah, and in all fairness, this is probably the most challenging part of learning a foreign language because, as Linda was saying, when we imagine ourselves communicating in a different language or using the skills that we've been learning in class, we don't really see ourselves writing an essay, do we, or taking an exam. We see ourselves talking. People in France or Spain or Italy or Portugal, or for you, Christelle, in France, or in the UK, US, whatever. So it's clearly what we are all aiming for. Again, language is communication. We want to communicate with other people. And of course, the spoken part is the most challenging, definitely. But I am sure that the stuff that we will share with you today will help. Carrie, did you want to share something? I don't think we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Brilliant.
Right. I am learning now in Newbury, and I do one-to-one and a group and also online. And I must say, I wasn't used to online at all, but now I am used to it. It's very good. As long as the tech works, it's all fine. So the different ways of learning have been a huge, I think it's just all sorts of hesitations about doing it, time, everything. But now I'm doing it, I feel very committed. And I think also having input from different directions. So it may be the same thing as if you're using different apps and things. Suddenly another door opens, and another way of thinking about what you're doing is available to you. And when you have several teachers or several interactions, it increases your grounding, I suppose, of what it is that you're doing, which I find is helpful and also very exciting because you begin to recognize things more and your progress. You can sort of progress. And the other thing, anyone who's sort of hesitant, I think, which has been really difficult for me to learn, is that it's only you, it's your own journey that you're doing, not anybody else's.
Well, I think we can wrap up for the night because what you've said was just perfect. I would like to add that Carrie is one of Vinci's students. And so all that you've said was absolutely marvelous because I could not agree more. And this is a conversation that I have every day. What you described is what we call blended learning, which means that your brain needs to be immersed in the language in different ways, shapes, and forms. So the reason why my challenge in Spain And I was doing it, 15, 20 minutes a day. The reason why it was so useful is because every single day I was doing something completely different. So I needed to think of the language in a different way. Every day I would go into a different environment. I would require of myself to do something different with the language, whether it would be speaking or writing something down or learning verbs. And blended learning is the key to learning a foreign language, because as you quite rightly described, when you have private lessons, it's all about you, and it's all about, a language coach adapting a program to your needs, to your level, to your pace, to the way that you like to learn, to the topics that you want to cover. Then so that's really useful, and that's when you progress the fastest. That's when the learning is really accelerated. But then when you find yourself into a group, you have to get out of your comfort zone, because you can get quite comfortable working with someone on one-to-one. So then you have to get out of your comfort zone, because you have to interact with the others. You also learn a lot from the others, because you have to listen to them. You learn from the mistakes that they are making. So group lessons is very good. And then, of course, if you can add to that reading a bilingual magazine, listening to podcasts, going on digital platforms. I currently use what they use is hypnosis, out of all things, and it's absolutely wonderful. And I only use it for 10 minutes twice a week. So blended learning is absolutely key. And I agree with you that, learning a foreign language is a commitment. And I've been wanting to learn Spanish for years and years and years. I've only just done it seriously recently. Now that I'm in it, I'm absolutely loving it. But I'm also loving it because it's done on my own pace, in my own time, and with my own goals. I am not trying to be better than Laura, who's miles away from me. It's about my own little journey. So all that you said was perfect. Thank you so much. Very, very good. So really, guys, tonight is about you. It's really not about the latest gimmicks of, learning a foreign language in 7 days. We need to be very open and honest. People struggle to get results when they learn a foreign language. The market is saturated with new apps and new resources and new books and new teaching methods that people can use to learn a foreign language. But actually, people really struggle on average. People really struggle to get results. So please don't believe that the hype when you hear with this new app, you can learn a foreign language in 3 months and things like that, because it's all a lie. I don't believe that nothing will ever work, whether it's, teaching techniques or the latest app or new resources, whatever, or even going on an immersion program in the country of the language you're trying to learn. I don't think anything will really work unless you learn about your way of learning. It's very much about your own unique approach of how you can best learn a foreign language. Again, language is communication, and we all communicate in a different way. So this masterclass is not for people looking for a quick fix, because I don't have that in my toolbox. It's for people who want to learn how they themselves best learn, and then how they can apply that to learning a foreign language. So if that sounds good to you, we'll get going. Laura, can I ask you to share the little diagram of the personality and colors? So have you guys ever come across analyzing your personality in color? No? Great. I love that topic. So you may have come across, many different ways of analyzing your personality and things like this. And at the Academy, it's something that we've implemented a few months ago for all of our learners. When they first start with us, we do a strategy session when we go through looking at understanding their personality in color. Now, you know, we're not experts, we're not life coaches, but we are using this to help us understand how you learn so we can produce better language programs for you, but also help our coaches, our team, deliver the training for you. So if you ever look at the idea of personality in color on the net, you'll find loads. We stick to 4, but you can find some that have orange and purple and pink. But again, it's a tool that we want to use. We don't want to be a complete expert at it. So for us, the 4 colors are working. If we go around this little circle, you'll see that we've got 4 colors. We've got the red, the yellow, the green, and the blue. The adjectives in there describe the person. So if you are determined and demanding and competitive and strong-willed and driven, then you are probably a red. If you are motivated, enthusiastic, sociable, dynamic, and you like to inspire people, you're probably a yellow. If you're relaxed and caring and encouraging and patient and you like to share, then you'll be a green. And if you are logical, organized, analytical, questioning things, but also very cautious, you'll be a blue. Now, you don't have to be just one color. Most of us will be one color and maybe a little bit of another one, okay? But more often than not, if you do a test, and we can share a free online test with you if you're interested in that, you will find that there is a dominant color. When you look at this, does anyone want to share the color that they think they are? Or a mix of color? I'll share mine. So mine is red, but with a little bit of yellow. So when I did my personality testing color a few years ago, red was right at the top and yellow was much below, but it was quite high. And I think that it was green, and I think that it was blue. I'm definitely not a blue person. Now, what that tells me is that there is a way that I'm going to be learning things. There is a way that I'm going to memorize things. You see, Crystal says she's blue with yellow, and that doesn't surprise me at all. And we've only spoken once. But because that goes very well with your job. You have a job where you have to be really analytical, really into the details, really organized. But you work in social media and communication, so you need to enjoy the fun and the interactive part of things and things moving and be entertaining. So that doesn't surprise me at all. When you look at this, you start, so Dominica said that she's green and yellow. That's a really good mix. Now, when you look at this, you can start to understand how you learn. Look at what it says to the side. It says, don't know if you can see it because I've got my, it says, let's do it now. Let's do it together. Let's do it harmoniously. Let's do it right. And that will tell you a lot about the type of learner you are. Let's think for a moment, try to think about something that you like doing or you're learning that's not a foreign language, like nothing to do with foreign language. An experience you've had recently, anything like that, but nothing to do with foreign language. Can you see some sort of pattern between this and your personality in color? So, how about my Nordic walking holiday I was telling you about? You see, when you're a red person like me, you are ready to take on any challenge and you are very driven to get to the end of it. but you're not someone who likes details, and you're not someone who's going to start to question things very much. You just want to get to the end goal. So when I went on my Nordic walking holiday, all I wanted to know is when it was, how much it was, where I was going to go. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew it was Ibiza. But Ibiza is an island with several towns. And I just wanted to know roughly every day what we were going to do. And that was it. And then I signed up, and then I turned up. For me, it was all about, tell me the goal, what we're here to do, give me 4 things that I absolutely need to know. I absolutely need to know when it is, where it is, how much it is, and then let's go for it. But I know that if you're a blue, that's not going to work for you. I have a colleague who's a blue, and she is probably the best colleague you can work with. She is as organized as can be. Everything that she does is perfect. There's never an error anywhere, or very, very rarely, and I've worked with her for many years. But for her, she needs to have all the details. Otherwise, she's very uncomfortable with the situation. We were talking one day, and I was saying to her that when I used to teach French, I love to have my little plan with kind of 3 or 4 things that I really needed to cover. I had my learning objectives, I had my topics, I had my resources, and that was good for me. I walked up into my classroom. I said to her, if everything is organized down to the, nearest comma that I need to put in my text to tell my students, I don't feel good. Like if everything is too rigid, I feel really uncomfortable when I walk into my classroom. I need a plan. I need my resources. I need to know that I know where I'm going, but I can't have all these details. I don't like it. And she showed me her lesson plan, and we started laughing, because for her, if everything is not written down to the last word of what she's going to say, she doesn't feel comfortable. And that is super important when you are learning a foreign language. Because if you are a red like me, and you are trying to learn some really detailed stuff, your brain is simply not going to connect. So you really need to try and understand how you learn. For example, when I tell you to take a different example to language learning, is to really try and understand how it works. So you see, I quite like cooking. And so I used to buy lots of cooking books because they look really pretty in my kitchen. But I wasn't very good at using them because I don't really understand recipes. There's too many paragraphs. I understand the ingredients because it's bullet points. But all these paragraphs, I'm lost. Like I have to read them over and over again. So now I watch YouTube. I find a recipe that I like in my books because I still want to use them and they're very pretty. Then I go on YouTube and I look at someone doing it because they're talking to me and they're doing it, and that works for me. So when I read, I know from that little story, I know that when I learn Spanish, if I have to read something, a recap of a lesson, I want bullet points. You can put a few paragraphs for me, but it needs to be bullet points. If it's too many paragraphs, I switch off. So, and my Spanish coach knows that because I've told her. And she always prepares lessons for me that means that I have little challenges all the time because she knows I like that, but there is no real details in what we do. Until I start to master things, obviously, and then I ask to go into details because I want to know more, but otherwise, no, she keeps it really kind of low-key, ready-made sentences. So I feel I'm learning, even though my grammar is not particularly accurate, but it doesn't matter because that's how I work. Laura, do you want to share with us, because you've learned lots of foreign languages. So do you want to share with us what your personality color is? And
so I'm very much a yellow with a little bit of blue as well. I like to have some of the organized stuff when I need it, but it's not for me whether I'm learning a language, whether I'm learning anything else. For me, I find the thing that sparks my interest and my passion and my motivation and the enthusiasm, and then I just go into that. And that is really what keeps me going and makes me want to do more and more. Natalie and I have the same Spanish coach, and I was actually just listening to what Natalie said about how our coach Esther plans her lessons, whereas my lesson this week actually is very yellow. Esther had planned this great lesson for us, and then she said something, and then I ended up just talking to her about this, and then we went a little bit off tangent, and we ended up just practicing speaking in Spanish for the whole hour. And we got to the end of the lesson, and she went, okay, well, we'll do this next week, because I just felt very passionate and inspired about something she said. And then this really sociable side of me just wanted to chat about that and just practice. And for me, that was a great lesson, because I had a whole hour of practicing my Spanish, which I just got to talk about something that I was interested in. I'm a yellow, that's great for me. A blue would have been, I cannot stand this class. I cannot be in class with Laura. So again, it's, Esther knows that that's what makes me feel inspired, and that's what makes me want to learn. So that's why she lets me do that. Whereas with other students, it's going to be different. Even I don't know if anyone else has learned a musical instrument or has learned anything like that. I'm actually trying to learn the piano at the moment. And now I think about it again, it's very yellow. I'm as Natalie knows, I'm a huge fan of Britney Spears. And so for me on the piano, my piano learning is finding Britney songs to play on the piano. So you can imagine me with my piano trying to sing my Britney and play my Britney songs. And for me, that is the thing that is making me learn the most, because I know that it's fun when I've had a long day at work and I think, oh, I'm going to go and do some piano. I'm not going to go and start doing my scales, because for me, that's not what's going to inspire me. For me, it's going to be sitting down and doing my Britney song while my boyfriend tells me to stop singing so loudly. Again, it's again for me, because I'm a yellow, that works so well for me. But someone who needs the structure, whether it's with the Spanish lessons, whether it's with the piano and understanding all the different notes and how they fit together, whatever it might be, it's really important to understand how you work, what makes you want to learn, what makes you learn, what makes things stay in your mind. And it's important to not only know that for yourself, but to have a teacher, whether it's a language teacher, whether it's a music teacher, whatever it might be, who understands that and is able to adapt their teaching and their coaching to you as well. So it's something that we don't talk about a lot in teaching, because we're not psychologists, we're language coaches, we're professionals in language training, but it is important to really take this into account as well, whether it's, as I said, language teaching or any other kind of teaching and learning as well.
I agree. Do you know what you could do is, Laura, have you dropped into the chat the test?
Yep, done that now.
Test, in case anyone wants to do it, obviously not now, but at a later time. What you could do in your workbook is, where it says strategy number 1, you could choose the color that you feel most represents who you are. And you could say, I am, and write the adjectives. You don't have to use all of them if you feel not all of them are a good representation of who you are. And try to think about things that you may want to change in the way that you are currently learning a foreign language. That would match that. And as Laura was saying, it's really, really important for you on that, to work with someone who understands that. You see, I spoke to a lady last week who had been learning Italian for a while, and she felt really deflated because she didn't think that after all the hours that she spent learning, plus all the work that she was doing as with all her self-study material, she could really say that she was showing any sign of being proficient in the language anytime soon. And she came to see us and said, obviously she had been learning Italian somewhere else. And she showed me everything that she had done. She had tons of material with her. And the first thing that came to my mind was the personality and color. Because when I spoke to her, she really sounded like a Blue. She was really a let's do it right type of person. And she worked with a language coach who didn't believe in grammar, who didn't believe in learning the structure of the language, who was all about just talk and just communicate, and it doesn't matter, and people will understand you, and you're only going to Italy on holiday, etc. And that made her, you know, to start with, she followed his advice because he was the authority and she felt that he knew. But more and more, she felt really overwhelmed in that process because her way of thinking about everything very logically was telling her that this was not working for her. And it was really just going against the grain. And I am sure that she's learned a lot in the last 6 months, but she's very wobbly about it. And I don't think that it's because this gentleman was a bad teacher. I just think that he failed to recognize that this is not her and this is not how she will best learn. In the same way that if Esther, my Spanish coach tomorrow, starts to give me really detailed lessons, it's not going to work for me. So do think about this next time you are either in your language class or you're doing some work or you are revising and going over the stuff that you've been learning, because you can start to decide how you best do this based on the color. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I tell you what, so that was your strategy number 1. And if you do the online test later, and if you, apologies, that's my Labrador who's decided to bark because the door got shot with the wind. Apologies. So if you want to do the test later, because that's not something you came across before, and you want to send me the result and say, can you give me advice on this, this, and that? Either myself or Laura will be more than happy to do it. But this is, you know, it's quite a fun little thing to do anyway. And we know, having been using this for many, many months now, that it's made a huge difference in the way this some of our learners have been progressing with their language. So now let's go to little strategy number 2. And this time, Laura, if you're happy to change the picture for us, we want to talk about learning styles. That to me is the big beast. I don't believe that you can optimize any type of learning if you don't know this about yourself. The minute you know the type of learner you are, it will really increase your comprehension and improve your engagement with the language, no doubt about it. Now, a short story from me is that I'm a little bit ashamed to say that I've only discovered this when I was about, I think, 28 or 29. I started coaching in French when I was 24, 25. And a few years later, I wanted to further my education, learn better skills to be a language teacher. And so I went into a course, and that was part of it. And it just blew my mind. I just thought to myself, like, why did I not know that before? But actually, why did I not know that when I was at school? Because suddenly it made a lot of sense to me as to why I was good in some areas of school and not so much in others. I even started to question my way of teaching French. How was I delivering my knowledge to my students? Now you'll see, again, when you do a test to find out the type of learner that you will find that they all come up, because we use all of them on a daily basis, but there's normally one that's going to be stronger. For me, it's kinesthetic. And so I was thinking about it and thought, when I prepare my lessons for my learners, I do a lot of visual aids all the time. I was spending my weekends creating flashcards and diagrams for my learners. And I remember being in that course and saying to the trainer, I said, well, that's interesting because I'm a kinesthetic learner, but I keep doing all these visual aids. And he said to me, that's because you need to do something like that today. And so in your head, you are visualizing what you want your learners to learn, but you are creating it. So you are creating on the computer, you are printing it, you are gluing it, you are cutting it. And to me, that was a real revelation. So if you've never done a test to find out if you're more visual, auditory, or kinesthetic, I would really encourage you to do so, especially when learning a foreign language, because all these elements come really handy. You know, you watch people, you try to observe, you try and understand, you clearly listen to people, and then you try and interact with people. So all of it comes into play. Laura, can I ask you to talk about this? Because Laura is the manager of our French office, but she is also our language coordinator in the office in the UK. And she is mainly the person that does all the strategy sessions with our new learners. So she does this really, really often. And you've got a great insight on that. So do you want to share a little bit with us?
Absolutely. So as you can see, we have these 3 different learning styles. And I'm going to tell you now that the vast majority of people, when they see this, they tell me, I'm a visual learner. The reason that people think this is because if we think of traditional school, how we are taught to learn as children, how we're taught to learn at school, everything's very visual. You have your teacher who has your whiteboard and who writes on the whiteboard. As children, you're expected to take notes and to write down, and then your revision is to read your notes. We ask you to make flashcards. We ask you to make mind maps. Traditional school, traditional education is very heavily orientated for visual learners. And myself, I'm a visual learner. I loved school. I was very academic. So for me, it was great. But for 2/3 of people, you're not actually a visual learner, but a lot of us are conditioned to believe that we are. So it's really important. And I always ask people when they arrive to take this test. And a lot of people are actually surprised to learn that, no, you're not actually a visual learner. You've just been conditioned to believe that you are. So actually, a lot of people, once they really get into it, they realize that visual learning is what is mainly presented us to in the world. But actually, a lot of people learn a lot better through auditory learning. This means that you prefer to hear things, and that is how you actually remember things a little bit better. You're the kind of person who, when you want to show someone how to do something, you want to explain it to them orally, and you want them to listen to you talking about it. For me, when I want to explain something to someone, I always want to write it down. I want to show them. Even as I speak, I'm very visual with my hands. If you're a kinesthetic learner, then you're the kind of person who needs to do physical things. So actually, the physical writing down of your notes, of creating different things, of moving as well. So maybe if you're a kinesthetic learner, you might find it really difficult to sit at your desk for a whole hour and listen to a class. You might need to get up at some point and move, and you need to have this sort of moving around. So this is a very brief overview of it, but it's actually really important for you to understand how you best learn so that you can apply this to your language learning. And I'm going to give you an example of a client that we had who came to us and she said, I'm a visual learner. I'm a visual learner. I know I am. Don't need to take the test. So she sat down, she started to work with her coach, And this is a French coach of ours who teaches French and who is very, very experienced. And after a few lessons, she said to this client, she said, Katie, I don't think you're actually a visual learner. I think you're an auditory learner. And this client, Katie, says, no, I'm a visual learner. I like to make mind maps and I like to make flashcards. And so our coach Cecile said, okay, well, let's take the test and let's see. So they sat down together, they did the test, and lo and behold, Katie realized she's not actually a visual learner. It's just that's how she'd been taught to learn, to write things down and to make her flashcards and to read things. And actually, once Cecile sort of changed the way that she did her lessons and she adapted everything to be much more auditory, which means that there was a lot less of reading and writing what was on the board and a lot more speaking, repetition, a lot of oral repetition so that Katie's brain could absorb the language and really hear it and learn it that way. And she, her coach gave her a lot more different resources that were going to help her to listen and a lot more auditory resources. And suddenly Katie's level of French really started to improve because this is something that was more adapted to her style of learning and to what her brain needs. This is just one example, and we have tons like this at the Academy. So for us as a coach myself as well, for me, it's always really important to know how my learners prefer to learn and how their brain works, because while I'm very visual and I like to have everything sort of written on the whiteboard and I like to have colors everywhere, I know that's not the case for everybody, and so I adapt my classes to my individual learners as well. I have one learner in particular I'm thinking of. He is very kinesthetic. He likes to do something, and he likes to be actually physically acting out the language, and he'll need to sort of move, and he's also quite yellow. He needs things to be very fun. He actually made the comment to me quite recently. He said, "You draw on the whiteboard a lot." And I said, "Yeah, I do. And I need to cut that down for you because I know that's not what he needs, and that's not something that is going to help him with his learning." So it's really important for us as well to know what different people what they need and what's going to help them. And it's important for you as learners as well. This is our second strategy, to understand your own learning style and what is important for you and what your brain needs to actually learn, and not what you've been told your brain needs to learn. So really working out for yourself what it is that is going to help you retain the knowledge and retain the language.
Actually, if I may add, Laura, what you said about Katie is also really relevant, because this lady actually needed French for work. And she could already speak French, but it wasn't hugely accurate. She said, I need to do it. I'm working part-time. I've got the children. So can we just do like a quick 30 minutes twice a week? And then I'll get to do a little bit of French, kind of little and often. And I think I'll be able to focus and it'll be great for me. So we put a program together for her like that. But the thing is that if that 30-minute wasn't impactful enough, because we were presenting her with mainly visual aids when she needed to listen to French, it's a half hour that I don't want to say was wasted, because obviously there's always language that's being absorbed, but we were really not making the most of her lessons. So, for example, if you learned in a classroom, college style classroom where everyone's at their desk, and then you have the teacher at the front, and then you get given an activity book, and then the teacher explains a few things, and then you write down. It could be that at the end of the class, you feel that you've learned hardly anything, that you're really not made for languages, that you're not intelligent enough, etc., etc. Actually, what it could be is that this is absolutely not the right environment for you and the right way of learning, because that type of learning is literally visual learners that have a blue personality. Anyone else is not going to be very comfortable in that environment. So when you think about the different learning styles, remember, you use all of those all day, every day, but there should be one that resonates with you more. You see, before I went into languages, I had the very strange idea to study law. So I studied law for 3 years, and it was nothing but learning stuff by heart. And I remember not knowing a thing about this at the time, but in order to try and learn all the stuff I had to learn by heart, what I would do is I would make condensed, I would condense my lecture into bite-sized chunks that I could learn. But then I remember in my little student apartment, I would walk up and down, and it was a very small apartment. I would walk like up and down for hours, talking to myself like I was explaining it to someone. That was my strategy to remember why I had to learn. I only discovered years later that that was because I was a kinesthetic learner. So for example, for you, if you, let me give you an idea. We all love to listen to songs. So if you found a song in the language that you're learning, if you're a visual learner, you're going to love reading the lyrics. If you're an auditory learner, you're going to be on Spotify all afternoon. And if you're a kinesthetic learner, you'll do a little bit of both, but you'll do, and I tell you what, I've got one just here because it was part of my challenges in Spain. So I listened to the song, obviously. I downloaded the lyrics. Then I needed to do something. So what I did is I took my colored pen and I was like, no, I know that word, I know that word. So my first thing was to highlight all the words that I knew. Then I listened to it again, and then I was like, oh, I think that means this, that means that. So then I wrote down in my little books what that meant. I created myself a little French, Spanish, English, and English dictionary. So basically, I'm doing the same thing that a visual or an auditory learner is doing, but I'm constantly on movement while I'm learning. Doesn't mean that I can't learn into a classroom, but it means that it doesn't mean I can't sit down and I need to be, you know, all over the place. It doesn't, but it means that I need to be active with what I'm learning. When if you're a completely auditory learner, you may just sit back on the sofa and listen to that song over and over again until, you know, your ears really got used to it. You got a good rhythm to it. You remember quite a few words from it, and then you'll be very happy. And that is really crucial when you're learning a foreign language, because you really, really, really need to play to your strength. And if you're not using the right way of learning or the right resources that are really closely related to your style of learning, then your chances of absorbing the language and being able to reuse it will diminish drastically. And it will take you a lot longer to learn that language. Do any of you have come across this before and know the type of learner they are and want to share with us? No, you don't know? I would really, really encourage you to look into it, because I think it's super important. And Laura was saying, when we work with students, we put language program together for them. And so, you know, it details all the learning objectives, communicative objectives, all the topics they're going to cover, what we're going to do to assess them along the way. And we always look into their learning style for all the reasons that I've mentioned, because there's no point going against the grain. You really need to see, you need to understand. Now, don't get me wrong. If you look at everything there, it says that graphs, illustration, PowerPoints, videos, oral presentation. If you learn a language with us for many years, we are going to serve you with all of this, because we want to use a variety of resources. But it will be pretty clear after a short while the ones that are best for you. I remember when we did only face-to-face language classes, I could tell by people's body language what their learning style was. Because when you have a class of 5, 6, 8 people, we only ever have small classes, and you say, hey, we're going to do a role play. You know, the kinesthetic people go, oh. The others tend to go, oh. So you can tell. And I would say that to my students. I was like, I know that's you. Auditory learners, the minute we would put a recording on of, you know, train station and they need to get the train times or anything like that, they were, you know, their head would go up and their back would be straight and they'd be ready, like that was their thing. The people who weren't particularly brilliant with their auditory skills would do that whilst they were listening to the recording. So it was really quite interesting to observe people. Now, it doesn't mean that I would observe a class and get it right within 5 minutes, but often their body language told me what they like best. Now, looking at this little diagram, do you know what you are or likely to be? Not sure? So I'll tell you what, we've got this little test at Vici that we can send you, very simple. There's a couple of documents. One tells you to kind of tick boxes, and the other one says, you are likely to be so-and-so. You know, our little test is not scientifically proven because, again, we're not experts, but we've been working on this for a long enough period of time that it is accurate 90% of the time. So if you just drop a note in the chat, I'm sure that Laura will be more than happy to send it over to you if you want to try. And you know what? All we're talking about today are things that you can apply to everything. We just happen to do languages, and we have seen really enhanced results from our learners when they were using this. As a matter of fact, Laura, do you have at hand a language program that we can show?
Yeah, give me 2 minutes. I can definitely find one.
Because we can show you how the learning is being differentiated based on the type of learner that you are. So whilst Laura is looking for the language program, what are the things that, looking at the personality and color and looking at your learning style and thinking about your languages. So we know that Carrie's learning French, then Linda's learning Spanish. That's really good. Like Christelle's learning English. So Dominica, what language are you learning?
English.
English. So we've got 2 English, 3 Spanish, and 1 French in the room tonight. So thinking about all the bits that we've said, is there anything that you think you could start to do now that will help you improve your skills? You don't have to write, you can just, you know, unmute and say. So Linda said, I need to speak more. So Linda, which color did you say you were? You can unmute if you like.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I didn't say what color I was, but I suspect that I have where the heck was it? I have a lot of blue in me, I think, because I'm quite a lot. You know, I like spreadsheets.
Oh, you're definitely blue.
And I like things to be right, but I think I've also got some of the other colours in me as well. But
People do.
'cause I'm quite motivated, and when I was in a class with other people, I feel I'm quite encouraging, and I'm quite determined, and I'm quite demanding as well. So I recognise
You're a little bit of a rainbow.
yeah, but I think blue probably would be the one that if I had to choose or die, I'd choose blue.
Yeah, and I often say that to students, it's like the learning styles. We are a little bit of everything. When I say that my main color is red, it doesn't mean that I'm completely badly organized. It just means that I don't like details, for example. So for you, if you like to be organized, and if you like things to be really structured, but you want to be able to speak more, what do you think you should do?
Well, I mean, I think probably what holds me back is the fact that I like things to be right, and so I'm probably unwilling at certain points to speak because I don't want to get it wrong and feel silly and all of that. I guess a lot of people feel that.
It's exactly that. So, for example, for you to practice either on your own or with the language coach, some really short role plays on topics that you favor. So whether, whatever you're learning Spanish for, you have a property there, you go on holiday there, whatever. But doing some really short role plays where you learn ready-made sentences that will force you to not think too much about the grammar, the structure. Does that word come here? Does it go there? And if I don't know that order, I can't speak. By doing little things like this, you will enjoy it because obviously you're learning Spanish because you really want to speak. So you will start to get confident. And what that's going to do is going to break down barriers of the I need to know it all and I need to get it right in order to speak.
Yeah.
Because learning a foreign language is probably the only thing where people will want you to make mistakes. You cannot be proficient in a foreign language without making mistakes.
Well, I guess it's like when you're a child learning to speak, they give it a go, don't they? And like a toddler would,
I often say that when a child learns to walk, tries once and twice and 3 times and 10 times. And, if you've had children, you'll know for how long they do that before they can actually get up and walk on their own. I've never seen a parent telling a baby off for not walking the first time. And learning a foreign language is the same thing. The reason why people say, children are like sponges, it's easy for them to be bilingual. That's not entirely true. One of the things that children don't have is inhibition.
Indeed.
So they have a very small world. There's mom, there's dad, there's grandma, there's the house, there's my school. So I'm safe here. So if someone speaks to me in a foreign language, I'm going to try and understand, and then at some point I'm going to try to speak. Zero inhibition. And all they are thinking about is communicating. We are the one as adults who have cluttered our brain with tons of other things like the grammar and the end of the verb in the past and all of that. And because we've cluttered our brain with that, and in the I don't want to look silly, because you're right, we all think like that, then we absolutely want it to get right, especially if you're a blue, before we go and speak. Children don't have that. No, all they are trying to do is communicate. But you've all learned a foreign language. Your mother tongue was a foreign language at some point. At the time when there was no clutter in your brain. But when you know that, and when you know you're a blue, so you like things to be right, do those sort of exercises. That will really help you. However, Linda, you need to play to your strength as well. And being a blue when you learn a foreign language is excellent. For example, for verbs conjugations. You cannot learn Spanish without at some point learning those really exciting verb tables.
Yeah.
But when you're blue, that helps tremendously. And I can show you little tools that you can do where you do your little cards and your verb tables. Blue people love that. And you need to use that to your advantage, because you may not be fluent as soon as you'd like it to be because you're holding back because you're a blue, but when you're ready, your grammar and your verbs will be extremely accurate. What a red or a yellow may not have.
Yeah, but perhaps they won't care as much.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
for them, they need to focus on trying to talk. So Laura, we work remotely from each other, but Laura comes to the French office every couple of months, and then we spend a week working together. And so I heard her the other day having her Spanish lessons. I was like, oh my goodness, like, you're nearly fluent. Like, I'm a beginner and I can hear you. And she said, oh yeah, well, most of that was completely inaccurate. And I was like, what? Because it sounded really good. But she's a yellow, so yes, she wants to learn the language well. She wants to have a good time, and she wants to have fun, and she wants to go to Spain with her partner and blah blah blah. The little bit of blue in her means that she's very good at doing the homework. I'm not. So she's like teacher's pet. So she's very good at doing the homework because she's been asked to do it. So she's going to organize her time to do the homework. But to me, she sounded very good. It wasn't really accurate, but she just carried on talking. So what you need to do is you need to look at your personality and your learning styles. And then you need to go, right, this is in my favor, this is not. This is what I'm going to do for the bits that's in my favor. I'm going to make the most of it, and I'm going to be super good at that. And the stuff that's not so much in my favor, well, I'm going to do these little bits around it to help me be as good as I can be. And Christelle, you say, I don't want to be afraid to make mistakes. And that's the same thing. And you're a blue as well. So it doesn't surprise me. You see, someone like me, I'll just go for it. And I will make mistakes, but I will try. It doesn't mean that I'm hugely confident. I mean, I wasn't hugely confident when I was in Spain. But if you read what I've written on social media, like one day my challenge was to go and speak to a stranger. So all day I was like, because I did Nordic walking, so I was walking all day. So all day in my head, I'm like, so what am I going to say? I'm going to stop someone in the street and say, my name is Natalie. I'm 46 years old. I have 2 children. I run a language school in England. I'm trying to learn Spanish. I'm going to bore someone. I have a dog. And I just thought, this is boring. And of course, what happened is I saw a pair of shoes and that I really wanted. And so I walked in the store and I looked at the shoes. They only had one pair and I couldn't see if they had any others. And it was a small shop in the old town of Ibiza. And I was like, right, Natalie, you're going to have to ask if they have your size in Spanish. And so I quickly looked for shoe size on Google, which I didn't know. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. And so I said hello to the lady. I said, do you have these shoes in size 41? And she said yes. And she gave them to me. And then she asked me something else. And it was a 3-minute conversation, but that gave me a real boost. The thing is this, because I'm a red, I don't really care about the details. But I need to be careful with this as well, though, because whilst it is serving me now, it's not going to serve me in a year's time. Because once you start to be proficient with the language, at some point, you need to learn the foundations. Because if all you do, and like some courses tell you that you don't need the grammar and all the rest of it, that's BS. Because you can learn all these ready-made phrases, but if you never learn the structure of the language, you have this beautiful house with really weak foundations. That's not going to look pretty for too long. But what I'm trying to say here is that we really all have like different strengths and weaknesses. You just need to have the right tools and strategies to either make the most of them or to try and make sure that they're not as bad as they could be, like me with details. Have you found this? Have you found the program, Laura? If you haven't, it's okay.
So yes, but all the programs on my laptop are in French because obviously I do the programs in the French office.
Carrie will translate.
But I can definitely share what we've got, and then I will explain a little bit what we have. So I did make it anonymous, just I got rid of the client's name. So this is you can see it. So this is a client who is a auditive learner. And one of the things we did for this client was we gave her access to a platform, a self-study platform called Hypnoledge. This is one that Natalie did mention earlier, where it is very much based around the concept of hypnosis to help you relax and open your brain up for language learning. So it's really about optimizing your brain for the language. And one of the things about Hypnoledge is that it is very heavily based around auditory materials. So you have a lot of dialogues that you listen to, but we do also have the transcripts that come with them. So for this client in particular, something we did was, she said that she was a little bit weaker in reading skills, or compétences de lecture, and it was something that she found quite difficult to really be able to actually read and understand what she's reading, something that's very common with auditory learners. So something we did in this program, it was only quite a short program, but something we did was to use the auditory resources that she had, so Hypnoledge, and we've used in particular the transcripts to help her with her learning, in particular with reading. So this means firstly, practicing with the reading, starting firstly by listening to the transcript and reading at the same time. This is something that in particular is going to help her to associate the orthographical form, so the way that it's written, with the phonological form, the way that it sounds. This is a little tip that you can use if you are an auditory learner to help you associate the words with the way that it sounds and with the meaning. So you kind of associate the meaning first with the sound, which is something that auditory learners are better at, and then you associate the sound with the phonological form and with the written form, and the meaning with that. So it's kind of a little brain trick that we use to help you if you are auditory, as this learner was. And then something else we did was that we focused on reading out loud in particular. So all of the text that we had, so when you are learning language, reading is part of it. But we focused, as you can see here, on reading out loud during the classes, which is another little thing that we can do for auditory learners to really help them with the reading process. So this, as I said, it's just one quick little example of something we can do. Again, with this learner, as it came to when it came to reading, listening skills as well, we did a lot of things that were based around. So when it came to listening skills, we did a lot of things that were based around podcasts as well. Podcasts that present grammar to the learner orally is something that a lot of people don't think about, because when we are taught to learn grammar at school, when we're taught things like that at school, we're given tables. If you're not a visual learner, a table of grammar is not going to be helpful for you. If you are an auditory learner, then learning the grammatical concepts via someone speaking them to you, someone telling them to you in a podcast, is something that's going to be a lot more beneficial for your brain, something you're going to retain a lot easier than it would be if you were to do it by looking at tables. So again, for this learner, we suggested a lot of different podcasts for her to really help her learn, and we presented a lot of the initial information to her in an auditory way to help her then be able to assimilate this information and to be able to use it afterwards. So I could speak about this for hours, and I could go into every single program we have and give you examples of what we do, but this is just a general example then of some of the things that we can do to accommodate learners of different styles.
And I just want to add that, to go back to what Carrie said at the start of the class, when we talked about the blended learning idea. Of course, you will improve your language skill vastly if you play with the language, as I said earlier, in different ways, shapes, and forms. So any type of resources, any types of environments, anything will improve your language skills because you are just immersing your brain. The personality and color and the learning styles, these are little strategies that you can implement by learning about yourself that you can implement immediately. The work that you need to do now with your little workbook is to say, okay, if my personality is this, what activity can I do? If my learning style is auditory, what should I do now? Rather than read a book, should I find podcasts that I like? But the truth is that by mixing all of them, that is when you'll get the best results. And again, to go back to my own language learning journey, I have a weekly coaching session online. I actually like learning online. You see, again, for me, that's very personal. If I learn when I'm at the academy, you know, I absolutely love the academy in Newbury, but it is my office. And so for me, I find it hard to disconnect from work, to go into a different classroom to my office and learn Spanish. However, when I'm online, it's my own little environment. I find it much easier to focus. I make sure that I have a lesson first thing in the morning because then I know I have a busy schedule and I'll probably be cancelling. I don't want to. So my lesson is the first thing, and the first thing I do every Thursday morning. You see, Esther does wonderful lessons for me. She knows I'm a red. She knows I'm kinesthetic. There's a lot of visual aids, obviously, because I'm in front of a computer. So by nature, there's a lot of visual learning. But what I do as well is I listen to the app that both Laura and I have mentioned, Hypnolege. And as Laura said, this is very much an auditory activity. I'm not an auditory learner, but I still need that. And then when I went to Spain or when I did my little challenge, that was really kinesthetic. Or when I work on my song, that's really kinesthetic. So I've done all of them. I do visual learning, auditory learning, and kinesthetic learning, but I know that the one that will work best for me is kinesthetic style of learning. Does that make sense? Yeah? I'm sorry, we said we would finish at 9 and it's already 9:30. So is there anything that you want to share or actually ask? I see that a few people asked for the test, and that's okay. We can email that across. Anything that, any questions? No, all good?
Can I
So
say
what would-
something? Can
Yeah.
I just say one thing? What I'm listening to all of this, and I did do the tests when I started, and it was very helpful. What I've learned is that I've changed a lot in the way that I learn as I've been learning. So from thinking like everybody else that I was more visual, and I am, I actually really now am much more wanting to learn in an auditory sense. So that's really gone up on the scale of the way that I feel I'm learning. And I'm happier to listen to things and not mind if I don't understand everything, but to keep with it so that I get used to it. So for me, that was a big shift.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. And it goes to show that, you know, things change. And so you can adapt, you know, as you go along. And it's probably also because as you've been learning French for quite a while, you're more confident. And therefore, by being more confident, then you feel better listening to French perhaps than you were before.
You can be very anxious about learning it and you feel very exposed learning it, but suddenly you get a sort of freedom through progressing that allows you to do these other things. So that's, you know, even at my age, I think this is crazy, but actually it is still discovering how you learn.
No, absolutely. And, you know, we have people coming to the academy who are in their 70s and have never learned a foreign language before. And, you know, and they'll say, we have a gentleman who said, so I've heard that this is good for memory and things like that. So I'm going to start. He was in his 70s, probably in his early 60s. He said, I was an engineer. For me, everything is analytical. Languages have never been my thing. I'm too old anyway. I don't even know if we learned them at school. But I decided maybe I should try because I'm going to take my wife to Italy. It was quite grumpy in the way that he was saying it, because he was like, so I'm not, he's been at Vici for like 3 years. And, you know, it's obviously I'm very biased, but I'm very passionate about it. And I think learning a foreign language is one of the most wonderful things that you can achieve for yourself, because it feels so wonderful to be able to communicate with people in a different language. But when we can find little tools like that, which means that, you know, we can pivot and adapt and we can help ourselves to progress faster and boost our skills, then why not? Because, you know, it's really going to make a difference. So I think what would be great is maybe tonight, it's a little late, but maybe tomorrow at the weekend, have a look at that little workbook. And at the end, it says, you know, what are the promises that I'm going to make myself this year? So if you're already, like Carrie, really quite proficient with your language and you've got a structure to it and you're very committed, then perhaps you can give yourself some little challenges of things that you'd like to achieve. If you haven't started yet, or it's the early stages, you should write down the things that you would really like to achieve this summer in language learning, and try to think about what we've covered tonight and see if there's anything in there that can really, really help you. But I have never yet come across anyone that hasn't used those 2 little strategies and that has said, oh no, it's not helped me. Everyone has said it sure made a difference to the way I was thinking of my language learning studies. So thank you very much for being with us tonight and spending the evening with us. It was a real pleasure. We've kept you a little bit longer than planned, but I hope that it was useful. If you have any questions at all, please come to me or my colleague Laura, and we'll be very happy to assist you. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. You're welcome.